Welcome to Brightidea's Innovation Insights monthly Hangout series. It's called today, Characteristics and Secrets of a RockStar Innovation Program Leader. And we are very fortunate today to have three RockStar Innovation Program Leaders. What a coincidence. Before we go ahead and introduce our panelists, let me just do a little bit of the housekeeping. So we will send you a report, which you should get tomorrow, and that will be through email. We are also monitoring social, so if you want to tweet any questions with us or have any conversation or engage with us on social, our hashtag we're using today is innovation, hashtag leadership, and at Brightidea is our handle on Twitter. It used to be Brightidea HQ, so for those of you who have engaged with us before, it is now at Brightidea. If you have any questions you would like to ask the panelists at any time during this Hangout, you can go ahead and enter those questions, and we will get to them at the end. What we'll do is we'll have an interactive panel for about 45 minutes, and then we will have Q&A to answer your questions at the end. Okay? So with that, I'd like to go ahead and introduce, our panelists for our Hangout, Characteristics and Secrets of Rockstar Innovation Program Leaders. And we have two repeat panelists, so you can tell this is a fun activity to do for innovation leaders. The first is Stephanie Hegarty. She is Innovation Program Manager at Cisco. Cisco's services, let me put her up so you can see Stephanie. Cisco's Services Innovation Excellence Center's mission, where she is working, is to build innovation capabilities that drive business outcomes for its stakeholders. To take a look at some of their innovation program statistics, because they're very impressive, is they have 14,500 community members, and it continues to grow, actively engaging folks. They submit 2,700 ideas or more from 85 countries, and today 83 ideas have been implemented, providing realized business outcomes year to date of 51 million, with 200 million forecasted. Quite impressive. And Stephanie's responsible for partnering with teams to drive innovation activities that solve business needs. Stephanie was also Innovation Program Manager, for anyone who may remember the Challenge Hangout we had a few months ago. She was at Nielsen prior. So you can see the demand now of Innovation Program Leaders. Used to be they were in their first positions when we meet with them, and now they're starting to move from company to company. So thank you, Stephanie, very much for joining us again.
Thank you.
And we'll also have Ayesha Takia, who is here again for the second time, VP of Innovation and Design Thinking at LPL Financial. And that's the nation's largest independent broker-dealer, has over 14,000 financial advisors and 700 financial institutions. And Aisha is a design thinking practitioner. I'm sure everyone wants to know more about what she has to say. She works a lot with the innovation program leaders. She's responsible for developing a new approach to making change at LPL Financial using an enterprise-wide innovation strategy and tools. And we welcome you again. Thank you very much for joining.
My pleasure.
And yes, and we appreciate. I think this is your third one now, right?
I'm a veteran. I feel like I need a ribbon or a parade.
We will make sure to get it. Some kind of diploma at least.
Thanks.
Okay, and then we have Alexandra Pelletier. Welcome. So Alexandra is the Presidential Innovation Fellow. She's in their program, part of the program established by the White House in 2012. And we're very, very fortunate to have Alexandra. Alexandra and Aisha were both in our 40 Leaders book, which you can find on our website, and as impressive in social and influential in social. And at that time, Alexandra had been at Boston Children's Hospital as Director of Digital Innovation, and now has moved to be in the Presidential Innovation Fellow group. So we welcome you. She's focused her career developing solutions that harness technology to develop value to organizations. And very, very happy to have you, Alexandra.
Thanks for having me.
Great. And then myself, I've been told for a few of these Hangouts I have forgotten to introduce myself. So I am Gretchen Hoffman, VP of Marketing at Brightidea. And Brightidea is the best software and expertise that you can get for your innovation programs, whether you're trying to ramp, reboot, or come to the next level with your innovation program, we help you achieve value for your corporate innovation program, and we would very much welcome working with you. But the main focus of today is that you can hear from the other innovation program leaders. Okay? So what we'd like to do, just so you can get to know each of them to start, is to have each panelist to share one fact that you cannot Google about them. So that way you get a little bit of an insider trader. All right? So Aisha, how about what's your secret fact? I guess this will have to be your third one now.
My fourth one. I feel like I'm spilling the beans a little bit to the whole world here, and I'm running out of things you can't Google. So if I had to, on the fly here, you might not be able to Google that I really, really, really love Halloween. Like I'm a very serious Halloweener, for real. And so we put a lot of time every year into our costumes, and the whole family themes our costumes. I think if you dig on my Twitter page, you can find last year's costume, which if you're going to do anything today with the 5 extra minutes at work, it should be to go see me dressed up as an alien. I'm just saying. I'm just throwing that out there.
All right. Thanks, Alex.
So for me, I think what might be interesting is that I've traveled to every continent except Antarctica, and I've lived in all of them except Africa. So I really like to travel and spend a lot of time abroad growing up.
Wow. And the other fun fact is you're from Boston originally, right?
That's right.
And so am I. We're Red Sox fans, so that always adds a little bonding in addition to innovation. All right. Now, Stephanie.
Hey guys, I think my fun fact would be I have 2 Weimaraners named Howard and Marky Mark. So they're my pals, and we they're just a hoot. If you have a Weimaraner, I think you understand.
Well, thank you. It's great to have you on the panel, and let's go ahead and get into the questions. For anyone who's just joined us, just to let everyone know, we have 3 panelists, and we're going to engage and interact with questions for about 45 minutes. Then we will take any questions that you want to submit into the Q&A, so please feel free to do that. So let's go ahead and get started. And Alex, while we have you up here, would like to ask you, for those listening who are new to the dedicated innovation program structure, which you obviously have a lot of experience in, where does the innovation program manager fit in the hierarchy, and really what's their role?
So I think it depends on the organization, and for any new program managers out there, I think it's an important question to ask and to understand about your role. At Boston Children's, we were part of an innovation group that was reporting right up to the COO, so I had a direct channel to executive leadership. At other hospitals that I've seen in Boston and other places, sometimes it's a growth of an existing operational area. So in that case, I think the innovation groups perform a little bit differently, maybe building out new incremental ideas as opposed to maybe more disruptive or emerging ideas that might be riskier. So it's always a good thing to learn and understand anywhere you go, because innovation takes different shapes depending on where you are.
Great, very, very, very interesting. All right, and then Aisha, I'm curious to understand, for your standpoint, if you can answer the same question a little bit in terms of where the innovation program leader fits in the hierarchy, but since you're in design thinking, how would the innovation program leader work with design thinking practitioners?
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting. We're at this neat place where a bunch of budding roles and disciplines are starting to come together in an organization. So I think I feel comfortable saying, as of right now, it's not probably too often that you would have like dedicated design thinking staff and innovation program managers, right? They're probably at this point one and the same or slightly related. So in my mind, I think of it as, whether it's the same person or not, right, just role-based, one job is making sure the ideas are cooked, right? It's ensuring that we're answering the right question, that we have the right problem, that we've really thought it through from different perspectives and have chosen a singular perspective to move forward with. And it kind of gets hands-off when we get to the point where you got to take the idea and actually iterate it and execute it. And that's really where, in my mind, a program management responsibilities begin, right? And from that point forward, it's all your traditional project management responsibilities plus this idea of process expediter. And the thing to keep in mind, the thing that makes it a little bit different, I think, from traditional project management is you're not going to, as a program manager, you're not going to have a lot to draw from, because the whole idea here is that no one's done these things before, right? Or at least not in your organization. So yeah, I think it's a little bit project management, it's a lot bit change manager, it's a little bit anxiety babysitter, right? Your job is to kind of make sure everyone doesn't internalize this stuff too much and get off board. So there's a bunch of different responsibilities that come together, and I think most people start with that good wheelhouse of project management, and then if you have the inclination to be that really savvy change manager, if those two things can come together strongly, I think you would, that would be the situation where you'd start getting into the right type of person in innovation to do the program management.
I love the comment about anxiety babysitter and savvy change managers, because at times those can be the same.
Yes, yes. It's one is causing the other usually.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So, and then also, Alex, I'd love to get back to you and ask you, what did innovation look like at your company before you were appointed innovation program manager? Were you involved in the process at that point, or what was the first order of business that you had as an innovation program leader?
So at Boston Children's, I got there right after the organization had worked across the community to understand what they needed to do around innovation. So for those of you who may not know, Boston Children's is one of the top pediatric hospitals in the world. We're affiliated with Harvard Medical School, and there's brilliant innovations happening all the time, miracles in clinical care happening all the time. So what elevated innovation in our case, and what started the program, was a recognition that innovation can happen at the front lines on clinical care as well. I think there was a lot of emphasis in other more research-driven areas. So once that was elevated to the CEO, once there was recognition that we could think about things differently when it came to clinical efficiency and patient care, that the innovation program begun. And one of the first orders of business for me on the digital health side, which was more technology, was first of all helping I think create the understanding that technology could work differently for clinical care than it did currently, and really trying to find the first 2 or 3 wins to help with that anxiety babysitting of people on the sidelines that were a little concerned about taking that risk. So showing them some wins, explaining how it could happen, really helped pave the path for more ideas to come forward.
Great. It's definitely about communicating the wins and getting people to really understand why they want to get on board, for sure. Stephanie.
Alex, I had a question for you around, being in our nations. People definitely still get that anxiety of, that change. How was it from, on the health side? I assume that it would just be amplified even more with any sort of change to procedures. Just want to get your input on that.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think the nature of our innovations had to be very carefully considered with all of, for any of you in the audience or even here on the panel who understand healthcare, and so many things balancing and fine orchestration all the time. So it was an understanding of how we could fit an innovation in, and these innovations came from the clinicians, so they weren't necessarily our ideas, and I think that helped gain buy-in and helped understand the context in which those innovations would be introduced to not disrupt anything around the patient care that we needed to deliver, certainly around safety. That was always paramount no matter what we did, and a lot of our tools were really augmenting communication, augmenting coordination amongst clinicians and patients, and improving the dialogue and understanding of what the clinical care was that patients were getting, or what nurses needed to understand from doctors and the rest of the care team. So it was, each project was different, and I would be happy to explain some examples later, but it was always part of that situational analysis before we went into anything.
Thanks.
So Stephanie, turning to you, and just in the full disclosure, I mean, you've worked at Nielsen and Cisco, both who use Brightidea, and we absolutely appreciate that. I know that there's been questions that people have been asking us related to not only the characteristics of a RockStar Innovation Program Leader, but how do they know if they should get a platform? And since you've used one, I think you're a good person to ask the question. So why is having a dedicated platform or software crucial for your ability to lead your innovation team to success?
I think that dedicated platform is everything, right? I need a tool to be able to support the activities that we're running. And the main part about the tool that I like is now it centralizes all the feedback around ideas, right, and has it in one spot. But more importantly, it provides real-time data of my engagement of users in a big company such as Nielsen or Cisco. It's a large amount of people that you're touching and a large amount of ideas that are going through a workflow. So, you know, us living in a technology era, we need to leverage technology as much as possible, honestly, to make my life simpler so we can think about that next big initiative that we're trying to solve. So the tool is really everything to support our activities.
Great. And it definitely helps you scale, I think, a lot faster, your innovation efforts and results.
Absolutely.
Can I just a question for you, Stephanie? We did not use a platform, and I really think it's something that we needed, especially to grow. I think in the beginning days, it's a very different. It's maybe more of a contact sport, touch, high touch types of interactions. But as we grew, I think it was necessary. How do you handle the responses back from the community that you might not pursue? How do you set those expectations, or is that still part of that in-person dialogue, or can a system help you with that too?
Yeah, no, that's a really great point. And that was one of the biggest things that we wanted to make sure always happened, right? You're disabling any sort of black holes, and you want to be able to provide that information up front. So what we do on the challenge homepage, right, to where people are going to go to submit ideas, anything revolving what that initiative is, we'll give the backstory, but then also give a detailed process, right? Here's what's going to happen with certain dates. Here's when we're going to be reviewing your idea, and here's when a decision is going to be made. And then we also leverage certain statuses, right? So it'll be a notification that's updated, but you can have tailored messages of why that idea is not going forward, right? So you could update the status, but then also add in that why, because that's the biggest thing that we've seen that employees want, right? If my idea doesn't go forward, that's okay, but why, right? Just providing that extra information, and since we leverage the tool to evaluate the idea, all of that feedback's already there, so that why is really easy to capture. When before it was all through email, it was in person, it was online, it was just all scattered. And so I'm an organization kind of person, so that tool helps me organize. So that's what I would say.
That's terrific.
Yeah, I would say I love the idea of platforms because they measure the social traffic that ideas have, and for people that are in an innovation practice that actually have to, answer for, what are you doing, where is their value, right? We've always known that there was this social collateral that was happening, this social movement that we never had the ability to measure before we got tools like this, where we could literally host that social traffic. And now not only do we have statistics about ideas and which ones are fruiting and which one aren't, but we also have, I think, an even more valuable metric, because before, even without a platform, I could have told you, it would have been manual, but we could have said, hey, it was this many ideas and this many floated through to being projects. You can kind of give some type of view of, of how the ideas are moving, but without a platform, I think the most important thing is you can't measure the social traffic. And that's, to me, when I'm looking at indicators of success, if even just one idea gets through the pipeline and fruits, that's awesome. But on top of that, if I see huge amounts of social interaction and networking happening, to me that's just as much of a win, because even though that didn't maybe fruit the winning idea this time, those are the actual foundational behaviors we're looking to spurn in our communities to get them to be innovative, even outside of our practices, just kind of in their day in, day out life.
It's interesting on some of the past Hangouts that people have really raised the point that everyone who's submitting input into challenges or anything within the tool, to make sure they're at least acknowledged and appreciated, so that they'll continue to give input, even if their ideas aren't the ones that are go forward.
Right.
So,
If it's a social network, you've got to, if you see it as beyond just a platform that manages tools, but as a social network, then yeah, you have to give people, just like any social network, what is the incentive for interacting, right? And so that stuff happens. Some of it is innate, but some of it you can also reinforce as the person who manages the platform.
yeah,
Yeah, like
absolutely.
one of the things I really like is with certain actions you can get reputation points, right? So I'm a super competitive person, whether or not I'm in, running the program or not, I want to be the top of that leaderboard, and at least I have an ability to set X amount of points for posting an idea, liking, commenting, so it can automatically kind of tally and show me, hey, here's my leaders, right? They're not just the ones that are submitting, but they're the ones that are collaborating more and really kind of helping support those other ideas.
Yeah, very, very, very good points. Let me move on just in terms of the biggest challenges you're facing. While I have you up here, Stephanie, what's the biggest challenge you faced in promoting your innovation program? A little bit ago, Alex had said something about, you got to show your wins. You need to make sure people know where you're having successes. So love your commentary there.
Sure. I think the biggest challenge that we face when we're trying to reach company-wide adoption is time. People saying, I don't have time to innovate, or I'm not innovative. And the main way that we get around it, I mean, this job is very much so marketing, right, and kind of selling the value. And we do various marketing campaigns to where we'll highlight that innovation is everywhere, right, and highlight those certain use cases where someone went ahead and submitted this idea to reduce the cycle time, or this idea for a new app, and to where it really made a difference, right? And that's a big thing that what we try to do. We try to focus on the business outcome, but more importantly, it's that culture, it's that engagement, and if someone can feel empowered that they are innovative and they didn't think so before, then I feel like my job is well worth it.
Good. And Alex, do you have anything you want to add? I know you've talked about it a little bit before.
Yeah, I completely agree with Stephanie. I think there are really two pieces here. There's the piece of helping the people in the organization understand that innovation can come from anywhere, and that it's important. Everyone can see a way that something can improve, and really understanding how they can bring their expertise in their role to really make change for the organization. So I think that's the primary role, and I completely agree with Stephanie's points on that. I think the other piece, though, is creating space in the existing operation. So again, at a hospital like Children's, even when I worked at MGH, Massachusetts General Hospital, it was hard. People were already busy. They were already backlogged with things to do, both on the operations side, whether it's in the IT function, finance function, or other areas, as well as the clinicians, obviously, were extremely busy and backlogged with patient care work to do. So finding space to introduce those innovations and to expand those innovations was a critical function of my job and my team's job as well, to be able to align the incentives, align the enthusiasm and the time to really make these things happen. And I think earlier Aisha mentioned the term, corporate anthropology, so understanding who's on board, what's the social network of the people on board, who isn't on board and maybe not saying anything. How do you engage the right stakeholders? And the stakeholders are not always the people in the hierarchical structure that you might expect. They might be other people that are influencers, and they're important to understand who they are and how to get them engaged as well.
Yeah, I find in this space, people don't, innovation's a little scary. Like, it's exciting to begin with, but then when we actually start to go do these new things, people kind of freak out, right? So the thing I find the most challenging here is this is a highly charged emotional space, and when we're at work, there's kind of this background noise that says, well, nothing here should be emotional. Like, we all should sit down and be professional and logical, and just the real life of it is, particularly in innovation, it doesn't work that way. So what you see and what people say isn't always what you're going to actually get out of them. The thing I really find the hardest is keeping my emotional level even, like not getting disappointed when I talk to people and they say, that's an amazing idea, but then fundamentally don't support it as we begin to execute, right? It's really hard for me personally not to get disappointed and to kind of approach each work every day with like, nope, smile on my face, we're going to try it again. That's my personal challenge. I think there's all kinds of organizational and structural challenges, but for me, the thing that is the hardest is sometimes keeping enthusiastic, because you kind of need it in the space, in the face of people maybe losing their enthusiasm for great ideas as we actually move into like the scary stuff of execution.
Yeah, it's funny that you say you have to charge through. We genuinely have an award that we give to our innovators, our people that are really, you know, even if it wasn't massively approved in the beginning, they know it's a good idea. They keep striding forward, and we call them the daredevils, right?
Oh,
So they're
awesome
the
idea.
Daredevil Award, and so recognize that it's the kind of perfect failure, but just keep going.
Yeah, and one point, we used to sometimes call ourselves in the innovation team the Dream Sherpas. So we were the ones who were championing people. We were the ones that they would come to for resources, and we would certainly support them and help them with their idea. You know, in my program, we were very hands-on, so we were constantly engaged with what they needed to do. But sometimes they just needed a place to come and, you know, let the disappointments be heard and talk about it and regain their strength and go back into the field and really push it forward. So we really had a little bit of that, I guess maybe anxiety babysitting, therapy sessions, as well as all the other things that it took to kind of move these things forward. And, you know, there's no one path and there's no one person, and everyone's going to bring their change to an organization differently, and it was our job to support them and also try to create the structures to make it easier for the next people to come through that path.
Right.
You'll steal the corporate anthropology, and I'll steal the Dream Sherpa.
That's a good one.
I love it. That's totally it. That's exactly what I am.
So I think we've covered a fair amount about how you'd work with different members of the innovation team or stakeholders, because we talked about, you know, promoting, you know, your wins, how you need to work across departments. But Aisha, I thought I'd ask you, how are you working through it? Because I think you're driving the design thinking as the practitioner. You've got the innovation program leader you're working with. Maybe you can just share for us what has been successful for you as you look to grow this effort.
Yeah, so I find I have to take really fundamentally different approaches for my stakeholders. I think of it, I use political language because I think it's apt in this case. I have different constituencies, and they have really, really different needs. And so, like I said, this is a really emotionally charged space. So being able to approach every person with kind of this mindset, and it's easy for design thinkers, I think, because you know, we kind of preach things like empathy, empathy, empathy. So it's kind of like applying our, you know, taking our own medicine, applying our own tools. And each situation, you know, there's this dialogue on our team that says, okay, who are we speaking to? And, you know, when we're thinking about triggers, things that could get this person really upset or really nervous without them maybe knowing about it, what do those things look and feel like, and how does that shape the way we're approaching them? And we've noticed that there's trends between the people who manage the work and the people who are going to execute this work because of their relationship, I think, to the risk, right? So the person who's going to say, yes, go do it, but maybe isn't a part of so much of how, but is certainly there to kind of condone the work or bless it. And then the people who are actually going to go through the motions of doing something really, really new and different. And those folks need different types and different degrees of what I'll use the word loosely of quote unquote hugging, right? Of us being there to help them manage emotionally their anxiety that's going to come up from trying new things. And we find if we really focus on almost solely helping folks manage the anxiety around new ideas, they'll go do the good ideating and execution themselves, right? It's really about, I find, creating emotional space for them. And design thinking is amazing because it puts a structure around doing that. So even if that's not, you know, kind of the emotion stuff isn't your space, if that's not where you navigate really easily, the cool part about design thinking is it actually kind of builds a structure to help you walk people through what that process looks and feels like.
Aisha, for your kind of emotional guidance, are there any specific, do you do that in one-on-ones? Do you have any specific tricks from a Dream Sherpa?
Yes, Dream Sherpa chick. That is, by the way, that is my new unofficial title right there. I love it. People are like, what do you do? I'm a Dream Sherpa. We do have some tricks. So a good old one-on-one is always awesome. Small groups are also always awesome. But I think there are a few facilitators tools that do this exceptionally well. So there's a few that we've kind of like basically tailored and made up along the way that we've kind of taken from other tools that help. For example, we have one called the Anxiety Cloud that help. We specifically say, so from whatever point of view we're designing to or from, we say, tell me all the things that are going to cause anxiety regarding this change in that person. And then we literally make a big list, and we build some energy around the words we hear often, and then we directly say, all right, so in our design, how are we addressing this anxiety? Right, so we're getting twofold. It's like good change management and good design, right, all together. And I find that if you facilitate those two things together with people, it's like they take their change. It's kind of like it's when I hide peas in the salad for my kids, right? If I go in and say, we're going to manage all your anxieties, people freak out. But if I put it into a structure of design thinking, it's happening. They just don't know what's happening. So they walk out talking about their anxieties, getting them on the table, and we build strategies to meet them in both our design and our program execution. So there's good little tricks, empathy building tricks, empathy building tools that I think you can bring to a small group to get this to happen kind of all at once versus one-on-one. Although in emergency cases, we still will go. If someone's really, I call it a wrench. If someone's just going to be a wrench, and I mean that affectionately, we spend a lot of time with those folks making sure, not that they're not heard or silenced or quieted, but that we fundamentally understand where they're coming from. And it's kind of the opposite. We want to make them feel really, really heard so that they can not necessarily be a disruptor to the rest of the team.
Excellent.
Makes sense.
So the folks who have joined, I see some additional folks did. I just want to do a quick regroup. We have Aisha from LPL Financial on the panel. We have Alex, who is with the White House Fellowship Group. And we have Stephanie, who is here with Cisco. And we are talking today on the characteristics and secrets of a RockStar Innovation Program Leader. And very much appreciate having them join. And we will be taking about 10 minutes more of discussion, and then we will go ahead and address the Q&A. If you have questions, please be sure to go ahead and put them in the Q&A here area. And then also, we do have people out in social at Brightidea handling any questions which they can submit. You can submit from there. And we're using #innovation, #leadership, so engage in the conversation. And we do know that Alex has just been called out in about 10 minutes, so if you have questions for Alex, be sure to put her name there and she will answer them as a follow-up. I will get those to her. Otherwise, let's continue, and then we'll take the questions in about 10 minutes or so. So what I'd like to do is get to the 3 top qualities that make an ideal innovation program manager. And Aisha, I think I'll jump to you first here. And then if you could also add not only the 3 qualities for an ideal innovation program manager, but also if there's a trait or so that can be detrimental where they wouldn't be successful.
So as you can probably tell by my talk track so far, I think someone who is aware of the people dynamics, who is aware of the emotional environment, who sees that as a real tangible thing to be managed, I think that is a very, very good quality in this space. I think the technical ability to facilitate is very important here. Being able to get into a room and rally ideas and focus points of view and really be able to kind of expedite the process of good thinking, I think is fairly important. And lastly, I would say the ability to make to find themes and patterns in chaos is very, very important in this space. You know, it's not that there aren't a variety of themes in any chaotic situation, but there's a little bit of art to figuring out which one of those to hang on to and you know, push through to execution. So I think those 3 kind of soft skills are super important. The things I think go on the list for could be detrimental are also soft skill stuff. You know, I've noticed there's a lot of people who come up through a technology space in this field through program and project management who get, I think, lured to innovation because it's where all the fun, cool stuff is happening, quite frankly, right? There are people who really enjoy new technology and new toys, but they're not being necessarily introspective enough to know that they're about to move into a space and taking an innovation job that's all about ambiguity and shades of gray and you know, letting confusion and chaos expand before it reduces, for example, to get good ideas. So if that doesn't sound, that description, like fun times, like, ooh, let's get messy before we clean it up, this probably isn't the space for you. You're probably going to find it really, really stressful, and your stress will keep you from kind of rallying people in when you need to. Change management is no small feat in this job. It is, I think, the primary job. So it's really having those soft skills is fairly important in this space, I think.
Excellent, excellent. Alex, what would you say?
I completely agree with what Aisha said. I think the people side is so important. I think you have to love the word no. And you have to love the word no in order to understand why it's no. And a lot of times there are good reasons, and really what somebody's giving you in that no is a construct of understanding so that you can move the idea forward, or you can help your innovator move their idea forward, or create pathways within the organization. So, if you feel like you might be feel defeated by hearing the word no, it's probably not the right job for you. You have to want to embrace all of the feedback. Otherwise, pushing something forward will be that much harder. I think the other thing is optimism. So even with all those no's, you have to see, oh, but this could get better because. And so there's always a million ways why something can fail, and usually only one, how it can succeed. And I think being optimistic is so important in terms of pushing an idea forward. So that's really the second thing that I think is important as a quality. But the third is don't be optimistic at all costs. Understand the value of the innovation. It might be we just don't know what we don't know, and that's okay, but be clear about that value. It might be this is where we think the market is headed, and this is why it's good for our organization to take this strategic approach. But try to articulate that, because through the journey of that innovation, it might change. And understanding what the value is at any given time is important. So have that optimism, but always try to balance that optimism with some practical reality. I think I'm back to kind of something Aisha said that triggered my thinking. Is I used to say to my team sometimes, we're going to be like a duck on water, right? So they look on the surface like they're just floating on the water so calmly, but their feet are going crazy underneath. So we always have to exude some level of calm to our innovators and help build that trust, or even to the stakeholders that might, still need to be convinced. So at any given time, we should always look like ducks, but recognize that we're going to be running. This is not easy. So that was always something that I'd say to the team. And I think the biggest detriment goes back to the people skills. If you don't want to talk to people, if you don't want to hear what they have to say, even if you disagree with them, you have to love that part of the job. Otherwise, you're never going to learn what you can do to kind of create these innovation pathways.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to note, too, that just a sidebar, and hopefully the ladies don't disagree with me, Stephanie, Alex, but, it strikes me that those two, you guys are from a place that is are known for being innovative, right? So I know sometimes when we start practices, we're working in a place that we think to ourselves, like, ugh, could these guys be any less creative? I mean, that's kind of what we're saying to ourselves, right? And I find it interesting that even in environments that are actually pretty productive in the innovation space, it's still hard. It's still, it's probably not as hard as it is in places that are like absolutely nothing like this is happening, but it's still, I find the more practitioners I talk to, it's still the same set of challenges. It's still the same anxiety. It's still the same emotional kind of turmoil. So it's easy to get disheartened by that stuff, thinking to yourself like, oh, I just can't do it in this group. But I think what's good to know is no, all the groups, this is the job. No matter whether you work in a really innovative place or not, the job is tough emotionally to do, and that's the primary thing you're going to be doing as an innovation program manager.
Interesting.
I think in addition to that, real quick, is that it's not only emotionally taxing, but it's also a lot of things that aren't necessarily paved the path for you. So you have to be thinking outside the box of where's this program going to go, right? And being able to be okay with the unknown, right? From an idea as well as from a strategy perspective.
Yep.
Alex, I know you have to go in just a couple minutes, so I was going to just skip forward for a moment and just ask you before you have to leave. First, I want to thank you because you've been fabulous on the panel, but also just wanted to say before you go, could you just talk for a minute on what's the biggest lesson you'd share if someone is going to be a new innovation program manager, and then any key takeaways, what would your parting words be and suggestions for them?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's been wonderful meeting you, Ieasha and Stephanie, and I've learned a lot from both of you as well, so I'm really happy to be here. I don't know if I have deep wisdom on this because I'm still learning as I go, but I think it's important to be open to your own discomfort in learning something new. I say to my kid, I have a 7-year-old, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. We have to listen more than we talk. We have to understand where other people are at so that we can meet them where they're at with what we're trying to do. And I think that's really important, because you might sit there with an innovation or with somebody else's innovation and you want to champion that through, and you might see exactly all the reasons why it's perfect and exactly what needs to happen. But as you work through convincing others, you really have to listen carefully, because they might not always tell you, and you have to listen carefully with what everybody tells you as you kind of move that forward, and don't take anything for granted. So I think that's, again, a people skill thing is very important, and you have to like people. You know, I think the other piece too is people are afraid of failure, and if you are really going to take on an innovation program role and help shepherd innovations through, you have to be okay with that. But yeah, I think it's important to be clear about what you want to learn from those failures, because at any point in time, every great idea has about 100 reasons why it's going to fail, as I said before. So keeping an eye on that, being comfortable with that, and being able to bounce back, I think are all important characteristics of somebody who might want to take on a role like this.
Excellent. Thank you again, Alex. Really appreciate your being here.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Okay.
Bye, Sherpa.
Stephanie, so we've talked on the top qualities for an ideal innovation program leader, and we've talked about, you know, any detrimental traits. I don't know if there's anything additional you wanted to add. I didn't get a chance to ask you the same question. Is there anything new you want to add, or just you agree?
I definitely agree with everything they said. I think that my 3 would be, they have to be creative. You have to be thinking, okay, it's those messaging, right, of connecting with your audience and getting that across, and you have to do it in kind of a creative way. It's definitely an organization characteristic that you need to be organized, because in my world, at least, and Aisha, I'm sure it probably is the same for you, that, I mean, there's different things happening around us all the time, right? And you need to be organized to be able to, as Alex said, float on that water, right? I'm going to be spinning my wheels and making sure that everybody is kept organized, but from the surface, it looks very clean and smooth. The third thing I think would be is friendly, right? You have to be that people person. You have to be able to connect with them and just be empathetic. So that's the additional. A lot of it is similar to what they had said, but a few extra things there.
Okay, excellent, excellent. And I know we talked prior about some additional questions about talking about, you know, additional skills folks would have. I think we've addressed them with our dialogue. So what I want to do is make sure to give time for Q&A, because we have quite a few good ones. So I'm just going to try to ask a last couple questions I think would be helpful, and then we'll jump right into the Q&A. So Aisha, would like to ask you on the one area that I think is something that folks have been interested in is, what prior experience have you had that you think really has helped you be an effective innovation program manager? So, like, what do you look for in people's history, let's say, aside from just the people part of it?
Yeah, so so I will give the disclaimer that this is just my strategy for hiring. It does not come from anything other than, you know, me, basically. So I really look for, I came from a very multidisciplinary background. So I spent time in project and program management. I spent time in process management and redesign and kind of operational excellence. And along the way, I did a lot of facilitation and strategy. Did a short gig where I did some business architecture. So all of those disciplines, right, they're all about seeing systems and balancing systems. And I find that set of skills has come in very, very handy in this work. So I think at this point in the game, all of us can kind of say, it's starting to happen, but you're not going to find a lot of people with deep experience in this space, right? They're gonna have some in this space with kind of the thinking and at least toolbox that we are all expected to use now. But no one's going to be like a 20-year veteran, right? So, you know, when I look at resumes, what I'm really looking for are those people skill things that I talked about, because those are the ones that are harder to teach. I I can give you the technical skills, right? Time on the job will teach you the tools, teach you design thinking, teach you how to use platforms. But do people, do you fundamentally have the ability to identify when people are in duress and then go figure out what they need to get them out of duress? Do you, how do you feel about words like campaigning and politics and influencing and selling? If those are all really scary things for you and not in your wheelhouse, this is probably, you aren't going to be happy in the position. It's not that you won't be effective, it's that you will be miserable, right? So I'm always kind of looking for, facilitation's my big one, the ability to get up in front of a group of folks and build a structure to have them move through for decision making is pretty unique and hard to find. So if I can find that one, if I can find good facilitation, I will then start to piggyback on, okay, do they have the people stuff? How far away are they from the technical skills? Can I teach them what they need to know? Which is almost always, by the way. Very rarely do I run into folks who have a deep lexicon of all different types of innovation. So it's usually someone's got a single discipline and you're helping them build on top of that. And I feel like if you've got the people stuff, you can move into the technical stuff and fill that in for them if they don't have it.
Is there anything you believe that it would have been nice if someone had told you before you took the position?
Yes. I heard someone describing something else the other day, and it's a perfect description for this job. They were describing a different subject, and they said it's kind of like you're cutting a new path in the jungle. Right, this job is like that, right? Because you've got tasks like, all right, I got to make sure everyone's fed and watered, right? I've got these logistics I need to manage, and I know everyone's looking at me to make it successful, and I know this is going to be really hard work. But like this other job you have, if you were leading this expedition into the jungle, it's to keep people motivated and to keep them inspired and to make sure that they're not too tired and to make sure they're optimized and comfortable as they're kind of going forward, so you can keep on your timelines. All of that stuff I've had to learn as part of the job on the fly. If someone had just sat me down and said, listen, I know you're really excited about all this logistics stuff, right? Because that's where it started for me. Super excited to plan the expedition. That's kind of what got me excited. If someone had said, really the hard stuff is all this people stuff, I would have changed my focus a lot sooner, and there's probably a lot of things I would have been successful at that I failed miserably at because I didn't kind of realize that was part of the gig.
Well, that's interesting. We've heard a lot about the people part, but I love your analogy of paving a path through the jungle, because it is sometimes a jungle with the chaos, right?
Right. And it's not either or. It's not people stuff or logistical management and program and project management. It's together. I'm not at all insisting that one is more important. I'm just saying that we tend to ignore this people part, and it's just as much of the job as the logistical project management part is.
Well, it's interesting because even the people. Oops, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, without the people, there is no innovation.
Exactly.
So you have to keep them there in order to get to where you're going, and so it's crazy.
Yeah.
In a good way.
It's interesting. I was just thinking about the comment I think Aisha made before about, you have a lot of chaos, and an innovation program leader that's successful needs to be able to see where the patterns and the themes are within that chaos, which makes me think of that analogy of the path through the jungle. Right?
Yeah, right.
You really have to know, okay, how are you going to get there, and be pretty determined and be optimistic and believe you can, and bring more people with you. So, yeah. Great analogy.
I thought so too. It wasn't mine, but I will absolutely use it.
So just to wrap, so we can get to the Q&A, because we have some great questions, is Stephanie, would love to just have you share maybe 2 takeaways that you'd like people to really think about as relates to characteristics and secrets of a RockStar Innovation Program Leader. And with that, if there's any lessons that you want to impart.
Sure. I think the 2 biggest things are leverage your technology. I'm fortunate enough to leverage the software from Brightidea. But technology as well as the people skills of being empathetic. Those were my 2 biggest takeaways that I hope you got from this session, and I'm happy to see the other 2 panelists feeling that same emotion, right? Because it's very much a daily feat to get over, and if you can conquer that and have a tool to support you, I think you're going to be set.
Excellent. And Aisha, what would you have as your takeaways?
I think that we are in a space and a practice where we really have to be demonstrative about taking our own medicine. So you cannot get up and preach, be empathetic, and be flexible thinkers, and be dynamic, and consider all the possibilities if you yourself do not outwardly demonstrate doing that all of the time, right? So it's going to sound corny, but you're going to have to be the change you want to see. That's it. Because if you don't demonstrate it, they will tell you it's not going to work, right? So you're going to have to show it to show people that no, it's totally possible. It's professional. We're not going off the rails into, innovation crazy town where we're talking about stuff that can never happen. This is real dialogue that can happen in an open way. And if you aren't willing to show up that way, right, then you're kind of being inauthentic by asking other people to do so. So you have to, not only do you have to know you're doing it, you have to purposely be demonstrative of it. There's a nuance there, right? It's not just, oh yeah, that's me, I'm totally that way. It's no, what am I doing every day that's demonstrating those principles to people in real time? And if there was just one single bit of advice I would give people, it's that one. It's show what you're talking about, because that's going to be the biggest influencer you have.
Excellent. Well, we're hearing about anxiety babysitter characteristics, savvy change management, that these are very, very important to be a RockStar innovation program leader, and really being able to work through the chaos in an organized fashion, which all very much big challenges. One comment before we get to the Q&A that I would like to make sure everybody does here is that Brightidea has a new release coming out Wednesday, October 21st. And the focus of it, we've been working the last year or so on it, is really to make sure that we can make innovation leaders' jobs a whole lot easier. So if you go to our website tomorrow, we will have registration for you to join the webinar that will be on the 21st, and we'll be letting out some secrets of what we're doing to make innovation program leaders' job easier, and you will see things there that you have not seen before. So we encourage you to go to www.brightidea.com. And I don't mean to make a sales pitch, but honestly, with everything I've heard with all these panelists and what they need, and it's an exciting time, right? The roles are expanding for innovation program leaders. And we are seeing that, and we're trying to get out in front of it and give the tools that should make it easier, whether you're just starting out, rebooting, trying to bring your mature program to another level. So we really hope you'll join us for the webinar on the 21st. And again, it will be posted on our website tomorrow. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into the Q&A. So, and for anyone who doesn't know, you can vote to make sure that the ones with the highest votes are the ones that definitely get asked. And the one with the highest votes right now is, what skills or capabilities not commonly associated with innovation or the program management have you found to be helpful or key to your success? I think you've talked about some of this, both Aisha and Stephanie, but is there anything else you'd like to add there?
I think storytelling is a good one. So there's a point in this life cycle, right? So fundamentally in innovation, the problem is not that people can't come up with good ideas. It's the gauntlet good ideas have to run from inception to execution that's actually the problem, right? So along the way, you're going to have this little idea or this big idea that you are going to have to help sell to the organization. So being able to get up and tell stories, being able to do that in an effective way, and like I said, I think storytelling is a really great way to do it, is pretty critical to being able to move ideas through the kind of the phases of incubation they need to go through so that they can get to a point where they can be executed. I find lots of really great technical people who know their stuff and they know innovation, but they lack this one skill, and it makes them not as effective as they could be. If they could get up and tell the story, that would begin kind of the people management stuff. I think that's a good first place too for folks that maybe they're saying to themselves, oh, all of this people, I don't have any of that. A good first place to start is to learn how to tell stories, because that will help you to start to understand that influencing's got a structure. It's not just kind of this amorphous thing that you are or aren't.
Couldn't agree more. The more times that I see great ideas and then they come to me with the final pitch, we all are those consultants, right? We want to partner with them and we want them to be successful. So many times it's just tweaking certain things within that presentation to really get that point across, and storytelling is a great way to kind of paint that picture for your audience.
Excellent. Here's another. If you are establishing an innovation team in a large, complex organization with limited resources, what roles would you have in the team, and what responsibilities would you assign to those roles?
Do you want to go, Aisha, first? Or?
Sure. That's almost such a loaded question. So that's how everyone wants to start new practices, by the way. No resources, really, really complex, and can you make it happen tomorrow, by the way. That's usually how that's usually the order I receive. That's what it looks and feels like. I think the trick to this one, particularly when you're resource limited, is to recognize that who you're going to need in a year or a year and a half is not who you're going to need in the very beginning. In the very beginning, it's going to be super important to have all of your executive leaders on board with what you're doing. So the job starts out as a sales pitch. It starts out as building sponsorship, building buy-in to what you're doing until you feel like you've gotten to this critical mass that now you can actually, if an idea were to float up and it was really different, you would have what you needed to move forward with it. I think then you transition into needing someone who is that pattern finder in chaos, a nurturer, an expediter, someone who can really, think of it as the phases of a seedling, someone who can kind of nurture that seedling up to being healthy. And once you've got that healthy environment, now you need a really creative, no-nonsense program manager who can help keep that structure alive and move it forward. You're going to have a hard time finding someone who's all three of those people. So I think it makes sense to think about who could you, for example, in that first phase where it's going to be kind of short, who could pinch hit to get things going so that then you could get your eventual project manager into place, right? So I think the trick is not trying to install the whole structure at one time. It's knowing that there's parts and pieces, and you'll probably have to install it a little bit at a time, particularly in a resource-constrained environment with one or two resources until you get some motion, and then you'll have what you need to ask for more folks. What do you think, Steph?
Yeah, I completely agree as well. The way that we have it is the main person's overseeing that overall strategy, and they're the ones going to talk and really kind of get that executive leadership. But then we also have people on the team that are solely, their job is dedicated to tracking the outcome of those ideas, right? So once they're out of our hands, touching base with them, every so months, and seeing where you're at, where's the idea gone, is there anything that I can help with? But then there's also that same person that's, or actually a separate person that's there to facilitate the act of crowdsourcing those ideas. So we have various people that own certain aspects of basically innovation, right? Get your sponsor, facilitate to crowdsource the ideas, and then the ultimate outcome. So we have people in each one of those roles.
Excellent. Yeah, that was a loaded question, but loaded answers, so that's good. That's good. All right. We have another one that has 6 votes here. How do you decide the key innovation areas to focus on before the idea generation?
I'm going to take this one first, Steph.
Sure. So the key areas to focus on, it comes down to the executive sponsorship for us at least, right? Identify what is the key areas. What do you guys want to focus on first, right? Whether it's tying to the values or tying to the strategic vision of the company. Those are things that, if it's supported from our executive leadership, it should be supported from our innovation team to help facilitate those solutions. So I'd say it's kind of a top-down for us. How about you?
So we're in the, particularly here at LPL, we're in the beginning phases of establishing our practice. So trying to get a group to kind of prioritize an area and say, hey, go play in this space is a challenge for us. So we've taken an alternative tactic, which I've had luck with in the past. We've focused on what hurts the customer most. Right? So if you're looking at all these areas you could play in, we're kind of, like I said, trying to demonstrate taking our own medicine here. We're saying that we're going to start with empathy. We're going to find the thing that would be the most impactful to the customer, and how we're finding it is, hey, where is it? Where does it stink the most, basically, for the customer? And really using those areas as the place where we're going to play. And the thought process there is that, you have a pretty big delta to navigate in, so anything you're going to do to remediate in that space will feel pretty good. And because usually those pains are long-standing pains, they're not new things that hurt, they've been around for a while, you have the opportunity to kind of come in and make a really good, what I'd call a lighthouse case, right? So it's something you can use as a beacon from that point forward to say, look back at that work, see how much pain we alleviated. And that way, even if the new idea doesn't generate a lot of money, or isn't, is not revenue generating at all, or you're going to have a hard time sometimes at first measuring your net impact, you kind of have this thing with some emotional collateral around it that says, all right, but look at, we helped the customer and they really liked it. So it's kind of hedging your bets a little bit to make sure that as you move forward out of that space, you've got kind of the buy-in you need to have forward motion.
Excellent.
Makes sense.
So we have about 4 questions that have more than one vote left. So I'm going to see if each of you wants to maybe take one of them, and then we can at least give folks that were kind enough to submit questions, at least give them some of their answers. That would be great. So one of the ones that's here also says, what's the biggest challenge you faced in promoting your innovation program to gain company-wide adoption, and how did you overcome it? So
I can easily take that.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. So I mean, our biggest challenge, we addressed it a little bit before, but it's really a matter of finding time, right? Finding time to innovate and being able to create unique scenarios or marketing campaigns to where people can relate to what that problem is and what you're trying to solve, but then also leveraging executive support to let employees know this is something that's important to me and to the organization, and I'd love to hear your feedback.
Great. And Aisha, how about this one? How would you go about establishing an innovation function and team in a large organization? It's more complex.
Got to find yourself a sponsor. And that is the shortest answer, right? So I've seen it happen a few different ways, but not super successfully. In this case, you've got to find a senior manager who can champion the idea with their peers. And if this question is from the senior manager, you've got to start having salon conversations, right? Intellectual conversations with your peers where you start understanding, do you really have a need here and what is the need? And as soon as the need's identified, the practitioners can kind of fill in the space with creative answers as to how you meet that need, but you really need that at least one senior level person caucusing for you with those other senior leaders, because without their buy-in, it's not going to work. Literally, it's the most important thing you can get is the buy-in of this group to move forward. So without that, you are at ground zero. The first thing you've got to do is good old-fashioned campaigning. You find a sponsor, you start that dialogue, you encourage them to dialogue with their peers until you start to get some motion around this idea of what is innovation and what are we going to do with it.
Excellent. So I'm going to take one more question just because there are quite a few votes, and then we'll go ahead and wrap. So how do you define innovation in your organization, and do you distinguish it from process improvement and project management?
Awesome
and Aisha,
question.
do you want to take that, and then maybe Stephanie?
That's a great question. So this is how I nuance innovation versus continuous improvement or process management. When we're fixing things that are broken, it's continuous improvement and process management. When we are fixing things that are not broken yet, that's innovation. Right? So that's the 2 fundamental ways of how we think about it. Now here's the catch. The toolbox here is really, really, really similar. Innovation toolboxes and continuous improvement toolboxes use different language and have a slightly different design point of view, but they're basically fundamentally the same. So that could be a potential platform for starting a practice. If you've got a really robust continuous improvement shop, you can fold in some innovation people into that space and start to get those, those lighthouse projects you would need that you could maybe hold up later to say, hey, maybe we need a break-off practice or more resources in this practice to chase down those types of ideas.
Excellent. Stephanie, anything you want to add?
Sure. So in brief, I think that, innovation to us is really everywhere, right? So it is that continuous improvement. It is future revenue generating ideas. It's everywhere, right? And so I think the biggest thing is to be able to leverage a platform. Really to have it all in one spot and to be able to focus on what the activity and what the overall engagement is, and to show the business outcome, I think are good places to start.
Excellent. Well, I know we're just past the hour, and I really want to thank our panelists, Stephanie and Aisha, who are still with us, and appreciate all of your excellent feedback, insights, and appreciate you being repeat Hangout panelists. And if there's anyone who's interested in being a panelist, because you see how stellar the content is, that is listening in, feel free to reach out to me. Would love to hear from you. And again, as I mentioned before, we have a release coming next Wednesday. Look at our website tomorrow if you want to join the webinar. We will be making innovation program leaders' jobs a whole lot easier starting on Wednesday. So again, thank you, everybody. Our website is www.brightidea.com. We thank everybody for joining, and we hope you have a great day. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.